Welcome to Shift Talk, where we talk about the workforce challenges and trends that manufacturers and those in the supply chain industry are facing every day. I'm your host, Adam Raymond, and in each episode, we'll bring you fun and in-depth conversations with industry experts and thought leaders who are on the front lines of frontline work. Today, I've got Stacy Cassio, who's the founder and CEO of the Pink Mentor Network. Incredible talent. She started in engineering on the factory floor and had a little bit of a career change. So I want to find out more about what that journey was and what the Pink Mentor Network does now.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. I feel very strongly about mentorship. And I think it started because I had great mentors early on in my career. And then I got to a place where there weren't a lot of female mentors. And I realized, wow, this is such an opportunity to think about how do we scale and leverage female mentorship in places where there is not as much as there should be. So that led to the Pink Mentor Network, which interestingly enough was really just my opportunity to solve for my own problem. I was looking for a female mentor. And so in that work, I started mentorship events where I would just invite the most successful women who would say yes to me to share their career experience around my pain points. And that work continued for about 18 months. And then I came up with this brilliant idea that maybe this is bigger than just a community. Maybe this project is actually the reason why I was put on this earth. And today it is the work that I get to do inside organizations is how do we mentorship and sponsorship? And so that has been just an incredible honor to do this work every single day.
I'd love to dig in a little more about what it was like being a woman in a male-dominated industry and the things you saw that kind of prompted you to go, okay, I need help. I need more support. How do I create that around me?
Yeah, I think it was the first time that I noticed that I could really benefit from female mentorship was when I found myself not advocating for myself or sharing my thoughts around a business decision. I was curious about what was holding me back. And I think it was the lack of allyship and mentorship in the room that I'm naturally an introvert, which I know that is going to surprise you, Adam.
No way.
Yes. I needed an ally in the room to nudge me and say, Stacy, we need to hear from you on this. And to remind me that my authentic presence and voice in that space was really important because I was representing a whole gender in these business decisions. And at that place in my career, I don't think I was mature enough to really understand how critical it was. And so I was looking for mentorship to help bring that out. And it really started as how do I find my voice, but then advocate for all those around me?
I think your experience is extremely similar to lots of other women in manufacturing. I spoke with Vivian Sanchez earlier this week with Lincoln Premium Poultry, and she actually shared that organization has gotten to where there's a 50-50 split between male and female, not only on the floor, but in leadership. And that took a lot of work and intentionality to give everybody a voice at the table, right? And I think that's what's missing is when you go into a facility and you might be one of less than a dozen women in an organization, especially if it's on the floor. That's really intimidating. What are some of the other barriers that you see when you come into an organization and they're like, hey, we've got this great idea. We want to start a mentorship program. When can we get going?
I think there's some education that has to happen because traditional mentorship or pairing experience with inexperience challenges those who are new to conform to the old way we used to do it. Innovation is not going to come from that type of program. And also culture, the culture changes that welcome diversity of perspective and of background aren't going to come from programs where we are asking everyone to conform to the way that we've used to do things. One of the things that I like to remind organizations is your mentorship program will fail for 4 reasons. Bandwidth. Nobody has extra time. Mentorship is always volunteer. Who has time to do extra work?
Right.
It needs to be part of the work.
You mean HR isn't going to just take care of the whole thing? Isn't that what the plan is?
No. And so here's another challenge that HR is going to have. There will always be a hole. There will always be a need for more mentors. There will always be an opportunity to onboard new mentees. And so there's always this kind of challenge in bringing on people, making sure that you have the right mentor in front of you. And then how do we measure results? Early on in my work, I realized the average successful mentorship program will last about 3 months. Because after 3 months, you have either built a relationship with your mentor or it's just not going to happen. Or the organization changes directions and we have a new initiative. And so it was more about, let's not think about this as a program solution. Let's think about this as a culture shift.
I very often hear about them being programs, projects, and to your point, those are things that are easy to dismiss after 90 days because nobody, like you said, they don't have the bandwidth. They're already struggling to do the work they already need to get done. And now the moment somebody takes their eyes off of it, they're okay, we don't have to worry about that anymore. That was so Q1. We can move on to the new thing we've been tasked with doing. I like how you frame it in, this is about changing culture. And it's not just, okay, let's start pairing people up so that one's a mentor and one's a mentee and we've done our work. So tell me a little more about that work. What are you tracking? I love that you mentioned data and looking at the results of this. What are the types of things you're looking for in the data to see, okay, is this working? Is this not working?
So a lot of the engagement numbers come from after launch. Are the participants still equally engaged going session to session? And the way that we solve for that is if we, instead of pairing people around experience, let's pair them around pain points of the organization. So for instance, for women, a huge challenge is overcoming imposter syndrome where we may not find a lot of other women. And so if we can, instead of building a program around experience, build it around that pain point. In this instance, it's imposter syndrome, but it could be anything. Whatever your organization sees as a roadblock for a certain demographic inside the company, let's build the support and the internal mobility to overcome that together. And a couple ways that we can really measure that is retention. If you can keep people there and continue to see growth, you have the right culture for internal mobility. It's really been interesting. I've also seen in the data that I've collected that there are 6 times in our careers where mentorship is really important. So if we can build some supports around those times, it's a great way to begin a mentorship journey.
I'm now curious.
Yeah.
What are those points?
Yeah. So the first one is anytime we start. So you'll see in a lot of companies, there's a great onboarding mentorship program. And the idea there is we want to show people examples of what success looks like here. So anytime you start something, leadership is another place where you're stepping up to be a leader. The support from someone who is already a great leader in the organization can be really helpful. Anytime you're talking about technical experience. So in your domain, what is the transfer of expertise? What does that look like? Oftentimes, if you can find someone who already has the credibility and reputation on the floor or in your industry or at that machine, whatever it might be, you can learn from them by watching and being close to them for an extended period of time. The flip side, and one we do a really bad job of seeing, is innovation. Again, new ideas, fresh perspective, new tools, new ways of serving our customers. that's not going to come from the
Huh.
people who are already doing the work. That's going to come from the next generation who is listening to those ideas. And then two that are really important are anytime you're growing your influence or your resume, having connector mentors who help us give us access to that next opportunity. And then one that I think I overlooked early on in my career, and now I see how important it is, are folks who are just advocates of your work. It's different than having the support of your friends or family. You're now having
Yeah.
people who are rooting for you as a professional. And over time, I've realized these people are often former managers, they're former customers, they're good allies in your industry who just want to see you succeed. And that has been incredibly valuable.
Can you give us an example of where you've seen mentorship really make a difference?
Yeah. There's a couple great examples. So one of them, I think, is when we train leaders to be mentors. There are a couple places in your career that's really important, but one that I'm seeing undervalued and needed right now is getting ready for retirement. You're getting ready to lose a highly valuable person who is going to carry their torch forward. Now, an interesting, observation is that as you get to that stage in your career, you want to hold on to the information perhaps because you built it, you created it, you worked for it. Let me create a space where you, Mr. Worker, are now sharing everything that you know, the technical knowledge in a way that is really going to outlive your career. And so capturing all of that is really important, especially on manufacturing floors, where a lot of it is tribal knowledge. A lot of it is built over experience and reputation. And so I think that is a place where we can spend a lot more time working to teach those who are getting ready to retire how to become stronger mentors and really celebrate their retirement and their careers.
Have you seen any good examples of individuals that this has impacted?
Yeah,
You've got to have some good stories.
I worked with an incredible team who was getting ready. They realized that there was a generation that were getting ready to retire. So they created this project called Retire with Dignity. And it was this idea that they created, this workforce created an amazing, I guess, like a diary of their work, but they passed it off formally to the next generation. And it was just such a great way to celebrate, recognize. One of the things that they did is they brought in the families of those that were getting ready to retire and just could see the pride in the faces, like just beaming with so much appreciation. And it was really incredible to watch. I think nobody wants to be forgotten. I want to know that my work matters and it will matter after I'm not here any longer. And so giving people the respect and dignity of that is just powerful.
Yeah, I love that. Because too often it's, okay, we're going to have a cake in the conference room and thanks for your 40 years of service. And we're going to be replacing you next week. That's not a great feeling.
Of course. What if we took those coins and those celebration trophies or whatever you're getting to hang on your wall and turned it into a video of what that worker knew, and then it becomes part of the onboarding process for the next generation. It can be it can mean a lot more to the folks who not only are going to be doing the work in that person's absence, but they're going to miss the presence and the voice and all that wisdom. So it's such a cool way to exclamation point on a career.
No, I love that. It's interesting how a lot of companies are focusing on the challenges of Gen Z and millennials and how do we attract them? How do we keep them? And very little is talked about the end of the career. So I love that you're bringing that into focus to say that's a key element to these cultural initiatives that change how people view each other within the workforce.
100%.
I love that.
I think there's also, in the absence of celebration of a career, we're going to hold on tighter to what we know and stay longer, and because we don't want to be forgotten. So there can be this whole year or years long process of what that looks like and preparing the organization for the next level. And that can be part of your onboarding program too. So it can be this great mix of bringing in the next generation by sharing the wisdom of those who've already done the work and led the way.
Let's come back to the Gen Z and millennial topic, right? It's something I'm sure you hear at a lot of companies you walk into. What are some of the things you're having to educate, re-educate leaders and workers on to bring these generational divides together to say, hey, there is a way to make this work when we start seeing each other in a different perspective? Like, how do you go about that?
Yeah, a couple things that I like to start with. I like to remind people that in every conversation and every room, you are both the mentor and the mentee. Now, what do I mean by that? You have something to learn and something to offer in every room. Otherwise, you're in the wrong space. And I don't care if you just started at the company or you've been there for 25 years. Either way, your experience is valuable to your teammates. Now, how you utilize that and the influence is going to look differently depending upon your relationships in that room. But it's really important not to underestimate that if you've been there a long time, you have something you no longer have anything to learn. No, of course not. Or if you are just starting, you have something to offer. Of course you do. And so that has to change a little bit when we think about mentorship, is it's not based on tenure. And then the other piece that I think is really important, I started Pink Mentor Network, not Pink Mentor Program, because that sense of belonging is so important. I need to know my experience is valuable here. I need to know that it's expected here. And so I think there's such an opportunity to spend time around retooling leaders and mentees on how to do the roles and then creating a space where they can really belong and contribute.
I'm going to ask you, okay, so you're going to share all your trade secrets today. No, I'd love to get a sense of, okay, what does that look like? It sounds good to talk about it, but what does that look like in practice?
Yeah. So a couple things is the first piece is the skill development piece. It doesn't come naturally to all leaders to harvest their experiences as development opportunities for others. So that's a skill we can learn. It's a skill that we can grow. It can become stronger throughout our career. Or if you do nothing with it, you'll never have it. So then the other piece after the skill development is creating a place where there's some sharing of common challenges, but then we're allowing folks who've already been through it to share their perspective, best practices, what works in our culture. They're sharing their experiences in a way that works for the whole organization. One of the things that I've seen done poorly before is we try to silo mentorship. Like, if you're my mentor, I begin to think you're the only one that has the answers. No, what if your mentorship could bring along a whole generation of the next workforce? And so I think, why do we silo it? It doesn't make any sense. Instead, one of the founding principles of Pink Mentor Network was every woman deserves a stage, a microphone, and an audience. Stop the siloing and make it available to anyone that wants to learn.
I love that. Yeah, we typically think of it as just a one-to-one relationship.
And it can be. It can be. It can grow into that, but it doesn't have to start as that.
And have you seen that be a way to attract women into an industry that typically they don't think of as being a welcoming, supportive industry going into manufacturing or logistics?
100%. I work with one manufacturing organization. They're global. And they created from their ERG work this really incredible place where the leaders start to address the challenges for women inside the organization. They bring me in to share some new tools, but then they actually also have a workshop where we put the tools to how do I apply these tools to my exact career and hold each other accountable for progress for the next session. And it's been incredible to see not only how much anticipation for each session we've grown. I mean, 3 years, these folks really, I've seen incredible career success and growth because they're able to overcome some challenges, but then really hold each other accountable for growth and development. So I think it's fun to watch the anticipation, but to also watch the growth that comes from it.
Yeah, that's got to create a snowball effect, right? Starting off, everyone's skeptical that this is going to be another team building event and then we're going to just go back to our work. But to see it gain momentum over time has got to be really rewarding.
For me, for definitely, I can speak for myself there. It's exciting. And I think the other thing that they've done really is they've articulated the success that's happening to the rest of the organization. So I've seen them then broadcast, here's the people who are growing and here's the skills that we're developing. And so that's also a challenge, I think, sometimes is you are in these programs and it's nobody knows what's really happening there. And if you don't report back your success, nobody's going to really celebrate it. And so I think I've seen them call each other out or recognize each other for the wins, which that's great. It's such an important piece of building a strong culture.
Oh, that's great. I think that is a key to it is if you don't communicate the success of a program, an initiative, a culture change, nobody's going to want to have buy-in.
It's funny too. I've seen this happen where there's a FOMO. There's like a fear of missing out that they've created. Like either I'm going to be part of this or they're going to grow without me. And so there's really cool. They've also welcomed in some of their stronger allies in the work as well. And it's really been fun to watch their growth and the movement that happens from it.
That's what I was going to ask is the Pink Mentor Network, is it just women mentoring women?
So I get that question a lot. And in response, my question back is always, do you have access to female mentorship? I don't care what your gender is. Do you, leader, have access to female mentorship? Because that diversity of perspective will only help you become a stronger leader. What I have found in working in a lot of manufacturing companies is that in the void of female leadership, there are skills that aren't being developed, like empathetic leadership. There's, we can be strong, but we can also support and nurture our teammates and their success and their growth. And so I think there's some interesting balance that happens when you have access to diversity of perspective or diversity of communication style. It's so interesting to me. I was walking a plant floor at the beginning of one of my projects with a client, and one of the operators stopped me and he asked what I was doing. Cause, I come in, I'm wearing pink. I'm the only one in the whole plant floor that has pink on. And he was curious and he said, what are you doing? And I said, I've been working on some teammate development coaching and work. And he said, have you heard of this thing called emotional intelligence? And I was like, yeah, I have. What do you know about it? And he said to me, I think that could change the whole floor if we really got introduced to it. And it was just this aha moment that people are hungry for it. They want an opportunity to do things differently, and they want a leader who's open to it. And so it's been really cool to see how that whole team has grown from diversity of perspective.
Oh, I love that. That's a great example. So what are you hoping to see in the future? What are the things you're hoping to see become cultural norms instead of exceptions to support women in manufacturing?
Yeah, a couple cultural norms that I would love to think about as I grow and continue to facilitate this work. I have seen such value in us looking outside our own organization and outside our industry and borrowing from places where things are being done right. So one of the things I would love to see is if my work could bring together leaders from all different spaces to exchange mentorship on different challenges they're faced with. And so I think there's such an opportunity for me as a third party to bring those people together. I started to realize, oh my goodness, I know the most incredible female leaders. What am I doing? I need to bring them together. And so look out. That's next on the list.
And that's such a great idea. Again, even myself, when I think about mentorship, it's typically within the four walls of that organization. Right. But a huge component of it is connecting with people outside of your daily world to get an outside perspective, to hear what other industries are doing, what other organizations are doing that's working.
And I think in the absence of that, people will always leave because they think things are better on the other side. And what they don't realize is right down the road, they're faced with the same challenges. So if we can get our heads and hands around some of these challenges, I think we can really make a difference and some headway on how women elevate in places where there aren't a lot of women.
So how can people connect with you, get into the Pink Mentor Network? What's the best way to get a hold of Stacy?
So the best way to get a hold of me is through the website or through LinkedIn. I am very active on LinkedIn. I have found that my target audience is the B2B community, and it's a really great way to share some thought leadership and to connect with people on a professional manner. So I'm very active there, and that's a great way to follow the work and to connect.
Really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing lots of your trade secrets that hopefully people will take to heart, borrow in any way they see fit, and then reach out and really start the conversation of, okay, I really want to see this happen here. Where do we get started?
What I have found is that in larger organizations, it takes one change agent, one person to see the value of the work and to reach out. So if you're that person, let's talk. I love having those conversations.